Please don't come any closer. The woman's voice was barely louder than the rain, but it stopped Ethan Walker beneath the glowing awning of the Halston Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago. She sat alone on a stone bench near the curb, arms folded tightly against the November cold, tears shining beneath the amber streetlights. Behind her, revolving glass doors turned endlessly as men in tailored suits hurried toward waiting cars, never noticing the woman who looked as though her entire world had collapsed 10 feet away. Ethan glanced at his watch. 9:17 p.m. Lily would be waiting at Mrs. Parker's apartment, probably pretending she wasn't tired, and he still had a 40-minute train ride home. He should have kept walking. His boots were already soaked, his paycheck was 3 days away, and the navy work jacket on his shoulders was the only warm coat he owned. But Ethan had learned something during 8 years of raising a daughter alone. Sometimes people said, "Leave me alone," when what they really meant was, "Please don't make me explain why I'm hurting." "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll stay right here." The woman looked up. She was perhaps 35, with pale skin, rain-darkened blonde hair, and a simple charcoal dress that looked strangely elegant even beneath the storm. "I said I'm fine. You're crying in 38-degree weather. That doesn't make me your problem." Ethan gave a tired half-smile. "No, ma'am. It just makes you cold." For several seconds, neither moved. Rain tapped against the hotel canopy. Tires whispered across wet pavement. Somewhere behind the glass, a piano played for people drinking $20 cocktails beneath crystal chandeliers. Ethan slowly removed his jacket. "Here." Her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" "Making sure you don't freeze." "I can't take your coat." "Sure you can." He stepped close enough to place it beside her, then immediately backed away. The jacket was old, faded at the elbows, with a small stitched patch where Lily had once tried to repair a tear using purple thread. It wasn't worth much. To Ethan, though, it meant winter mornings at bus stops, late-night repair calls, and hundreds of walks home when saving cab. Fare mattered more than comfort. The woman touched the sleeve. "You don't even know me." Ethan looked toward the station entrance. "Maybe that's why it counts." She stared at him as if those 5 words had reached someplace money, apologies, and polished speeches never could. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ethan." "Ethan what?" He hesitated, then smiled. "Just Ethan tonight." For the first time, something softened in her expression. "I'm Claire." He nodded. No last name. No questions. No bargain. He turned toward the station as cold rain immediately soaked through his work shirt. "Wait," Claire called. Ethan looked back. "How do I return it? Help somebody else someday." Then he disappeared down the subway stairs. Claire remained beneath the awning, clutching a stranger's worn jacket around shoulders that had carried an empire all day and somehow could not carry themselves tonight. 2 minutes later, 3 black SUVs swept toward the hotel entrance. A sharply dressed woman rushed from the first vehicle. Phone pressed her ear. "We found her," she whispered. "Ms. Whitmore is here." Claire closed her eyes. Across the street, Ethan's train vanished into the night, carrying away the single father who had just given his only jacket to a crying stranger without realizing that Claire Whitmore was the billionaire CEO whose name crowned one of the largest corporate towers in America. By the time Ethan Walker reached the third-floor apartment he shared with his daughter, his work shirt was damp through to the skin and his hands had gone stiff from a cold. The hallway smelled faintly of laundry detergent and somebody's late-night chili, ordinary things that made the building feel warmer than it really was. He knocked twice on Mrs. Parker's door, and before the second knock finished, 8-year-old Lily appeared wearing pink pajamas beneath an oversized Chicago Bear sweatshirt. "Daddy." She wrapped both arms around his waist, then immediately pulled back. "You're freezing. Just Chicago reminding me who's boss." "Where's your jacket?" Ethan glanced toward Mrs. Parker, who stood behind Lily with the knowing expression of a woman who had lived long enough to recognize when someone was avoiding an answer. "Long story." Lily planted both hands on her hips. "I'm 8. I have time." Ethan laughed softly and led her across the hall into their apartment. It was small, warm, and carefully kept. A second-hand couch faced an old television. Lily's school drawings covered the refrigerator beside, overdue notices Ethan had deliberately turned face down. On the kitchen counter sat a glass jar marked Christmas, holding $23 and some change. Ethan changed into a dry sweatshirt while Lily heated canned tomato soup under his supervision. "So?" she asked. "So what?" "The jacket." Ethan opened 2 grilled cheese sandwiches and divided the better-looking one onto Lily's plate. "I gave it to somebody." Lily stopped chewing. "Who?" "A woman." "Was she cold?" "Very." "Did you know her?" "No." Lily considered this with the seriousness children reserve for matters adults complicated unnecessarily. "Was she nice?" Ethan remembered Claire's trembling hands, the tears she had tried to hide, and the strange exhaustion in her eyes. "I think she was having a hard night." Lily looked toward the rain crawling down the window. "But that was your only winter jacket." "I know, and winter is almost here." "Also true. So why did you give it away?" Ethan leaned back. He could have explained charity. He could have talked about dignity, grace, or the years after Lily's mother died when strangers had quietly helped them survive days he still preferred not to remember. Instead, he gave his daughter the simplest truth. Someone needed it more tonight. Lily studied him, then nodded. "Mom would have done that." The room went quiet. Ethan lowered his eyes to his soup. "Yeah," he whispered. "She would have." 11 miles away, Claire Whitmore stepped from a private elevator onto the 61st floor of Whitmore Industries headquarters. Gone was the crying stranger beneath the hotel awning. Assistants rose as she passed. Security officers addressed her as ma'am. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago glittered beneath the rain like an empire made of glass. "The emergency board meeting starts at 7 tomorrow morning," her chief of staff, Rebecca Sloan, said. "Legal is waiting, investors are calling, and Forbes wants a statement about the leadership dispute." Claire barely listened. She entered her private office and closed the door. On one wall hung photographs with senators, governors, and Fortune 500 executives. On another rested awards celebrating a company valued in the billions. Yet Claire stood alone beside her desk, holding something no one in that world would have considered valuable: Ethan's faded navy jacket. Her fingers found Lily's crooked purple stitching near the elbow. She remembered his words. "Help somebody else someday." Claire had spent years surrounded by people who knew exactly who she was before offering anything. Ethan had known nothing. No surname, no net worth, no cameras, no advantage. She opened her laptop and stared at the Whitmore Industries logo glowing across the screen. Then her eyes moved back to the jacket. "Ethan," she whispered. For the first time that night, Claire Whitmore did something the billionaire CEO almost never did without knowing the outcome. She wondered how she could find the single father who had walked into the cold for her without ever discovering that the woman wearing his jacket controlled a billion-dollar empire. At 6:43 the next morning, Claire Whitmore stood alone in her private office while Chicago slowly turned silver beyond 61 floors of glass. Ethan's navy jacket rested across the back of a leather chair, looking almost absurd among polished walnut, original artwork, and furniture selected by designers who charged more for an hour than Ethan probably earned in a day. Claire had arrived before everyone else, yet she had barely slept. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw rain running from Ethan's hair as he walked toward the subway without his coat. No Josetastion, no request, no idea who she was. At exactly 7, the boardroom doors opened. "We need certainty today," said Richard Caldwell, Whitmore Industries' chief operating officer. "Investors are nervous." "Investors are always nervous," Claire replied. "That's why they hire us to remain calm." 12 executives sat around a table long enough to belong in another century. Screens displayed market projections, legal documents, and the company's multi-billion-dollar valuation. Claire took her usual seat at the head. Her expression was composed again, her voice controlled, but something inside her had shifted. The night before, Caldwell and several board members had challenged her decision to reject a restructuring plan that would eliminate hundreds of maintenance and service positions across the Midwest. They called it efficiency. Claire called it forgetting the people whose names never appeared in annual reports. $28 million in annual savings, Caldwell said. "You're protecting jobs that can be outsourced." Claire looked around the room. Jobs held by people with mortgages, children, and grocery bills. Caldwell sighed. This is business, Claire. Sentiment cannot run a corporation. For a moment, she thought of a faded jacket with purple stitching. Neither can contempt. Silence settled across the table. The meeting continued for nearly 2 hours, but Claire's mind kept returning to Ethan. When it finally ended, Rebecca followed her into the office carrying a tablet. You have 11 calls waiting. Cancel the first 3. Rebecca blinked. Claire rarely canceled anything. And I need something else. Of course. Claire glanced at the jacket. Find Ethan. Rebecca followed her gaze. The man from last night? Yes. Last name? I don't know. Phone number? No. Where does he work? Claire paused. I don't know that either. Rebecca almost smiled. You're making this easy. He was wearing a gray work shirt. There was a stitched logo over the pocket, but the rain had blurred it. Something mechanical, maybe heating or building maintenance. And what exactly do I tell him when I find him? Claire's eyes rested on the purple thread. Tell him I want to return his jacket. Rebecca nodded, but Claire knew that was only part of the truth. Across town, Ethan was already beginning another 12-hour shift at Lakeshore Mechanical Services. He stood beside his supervisor, Frank Delaney, studying the day's assignments while drinking gas station coffee from a paper cup. Walker, you're downtown today, Frank said. Commercial HVAC emergency. Big account. Ethan took the work order. How big? Whitmore Industries headquarters. Ethan whistled softly. Fancy. Try not to touch anything expensive. There goes my whole plan. Frank laughed and walked away. Ethan folded the work order into his pocket without recognizing the name. At 9:26 a.m., his service van rolled into the underground loading entrance of a 61-story tower. Upstairs, Rebecca entered Claire's office, carrying new information. I found a logo from the hotel security footage, she said. Lakeshore Mechanical Services. Claire looked up sharply. Rebecca turned the tablet around. And this is strange. Their crew checked into our building 12 minutes ago. Claire rose slowly and looked through the glass wall toward the elevators, just as a maintenance cart appeared at the far end of the corridor. Behind it walked Ethan Walker, wearing the same calm expression she remembered from the rain. He glanced toward the executive floor, unaware that the woman he knew only as Claire was standing inside the corner office reserved for the Billionaire CEO. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Ethan pushed his maintenance cart onto the 61st floor without looking up from the service tablet in his hand. Conference zone thermostat failure, he murmured. Of course rich people get cold too. A receptionist almost smiled before pointing toward the executive corridor. Ethan thanked her and followed the polished hallway, where every footstep seemed too loud against the marble. He was kneeling beside a wall panel when he heard a familiar voice behind him. Ethan, his hand stopped. For half a second, he thought exhaustion was playing tricks on him. Then he stood and turned. Claire was 20 feet away. No rain-soaked hair. No trembling hands. No tears. She wore a tailored navy suit, and beside her stood Rebecca with a tablet pressed against her chest. Two executives stepped aside to let Claire pass. Good morning, Ms. Whitmore, one said. Ethan's eyes moved from the executive to Claire, then toward the silver lettering on the glass wall behind her. Claire Whitmore, Chief Executive Officer. He blinked. Once. Claire. Hello, Ethan. Whitmore. She nodded. Ethan looked through the windows at Chicago stretching beneath them, then back at the woman he had mistaken for someone stranded and alone. So this is your company? Rebecca cleared her throat softly. Claire almost smiled. Technically, the shareholders would object to that wording. That sounds like a yes. It's complicated. $1 billion complicated? Claire studied him carefully. Most people changed the instant they understood her wealth. Their shoulders straightened. Their voices became sweeter. Their eyes began calculating. Ethan only looked surprised. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Would it have changed anything? Ethan considered that. No, that's why. A silence passed between them, quiet but strangely comfortable. Then Ethan noticed his jacket folded over Claire's arm. You brought it. I wanted to return it. You could have kept it another day. I think you need it more than I do. My daughter agrees with you. Claire's expression softened. You have a daughter? Lily. 8 years old, very opinionated about winter clothing. She sounds sensible. Terrifyingly, Claire held out the jacket. Ethan took it, noticing the fabric had been professionally cleaned, though Lily's crooked purple stitching remained untouched. You didn't fix the patch. It looked important. Ethan ran his thumb over the thread. Lily repaired it when she was 6. Then I made the right decision. Before Ethan could answer, a man approached from the boardroom. Richard Caldwell's expensive shoes clicked sharply against the floor. His gaze moved from Claire to Ethan, then to the jacket between them. Claire, investors are waiting downstairs. He looked at Ethan's uniform. Is there a problem? No, Claire said. Ethan is repairing the HVAC system. Caldwell studied Ethan longer than necessary. You two know each other? Ethan sensed the temperature change before Claire answered. We met last night. Caldwell's eyebrows rose. Last night, he helped me. Claire's voice remained calm. That's all you need to know. Ethan slipped the jacket over his arm. And I should probably get back to work. Claire nodded, but her eyes followed him as he returned to the thermostat panel. 10 minutes later, the conference room temperature began climbing towards 72 degrees. Ethan packed his tools and headed for the service elevator, leaving Claire to the world of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. But Caldwell remained beside the glass wall, watching him leave. Interesting coincidence, he said. Claire turned. What is? A maintenance worker meets you outside the Halston Grand one night, then appears on your executive floor the next morning. Her expression hardened. Be careful, Richard. I'm simply asking whether he knew who you were. Claire looked toward the closed elevator doors. He didn't. You're certain? Absolutely. Caldwell said nothing, but suspicion had already entered the room. And as Ethan descended toward the lobby, wearing the jacket he had given away, without knowing Claire's identity, he had no idea that the secret of who she was had just created a far more dangerous question inside her corporate world. Who did they believe he was? By noon, Ethan had already returned to Lakeshore Mechanical Services when Frank Delaney called him into the cramped office behind the parts counter. The place smelled of coffee, machine oil, and cardboard boxes warmed by an aging radiator. Frank shut the door. That alone told Ethan this was not about another service call. Sit down, Walker. I'm fine standing. Frank rubbed his forehead. Whitmore Industries called. Ethan's expression changed. The system fail again? System's perfect. Then what? Frank turned his computer monitor around. An email filled the screen beneath the Whitmore corporate logo. They're asking questions about you. Ethan read slowly. Employment history, access records, assignment procedures, whether technicians knew client identities before dispatch. What? You tell me. Ethan's jaw tightened. I met Claire Whitmore last night. Frank stared. The CEO? I didn't know she was the CEO. How do you accidentally meet a billionaire? Same way you meet anybody else. Ethan told him about the rain, the hotel, the woman crying beneath the awning, and the jacket. He left nothing out, because there was nothing to hide. Frank leaned back. And then you just happened to get assigned to her building this morning. You assigned me. I know that. Apparently somebody doesn't. 40 minutes later, Ethan was asked to return downtown. This time there was no maintenance cart waiting for him. Rebecca Sloan met him in a small conference room on the 38th floor. Richard Caldwell sat across the table with 2 members of corporate security. Claire was nowhere in sight. Mr. Walker, Caldwell began. This is simply a routine clarification. Ethan remained standing. Routine usually doesn't require 3 people. Caldwell folded his hands. When did you first learn Claire Whitmore was staying at the Halston Grand? I didn't. Why were you outside that hotel? Walking to the train. And you approached her? She was crying. Then gave her your jacket. Yes. Without knowing who she was. That's generally how strangers work. One security officer lowered his eyes, hiding the beginning of a smile. Caldwell did not. You expect us to believe that less than 12 hours later, by extraordinary coincidence, you were assigned to Whitmore headquarters. Ethan looked at Rebecca. Her discomfort answered the question before she spoke. Mr. Caldwell believes the sequence deserves review. Do you? Ethan asked. Rebecca paused. I believe facts deserve review. Caldwell slid a printed photograph across the table. It showed Ethan beneath the hotel awning with Claire. Someone could interpret this differently. Ethan looked at the photograph, then pushed it back. Someone already has. Were you hoping for compensation? No employment. No. Access to Ms. Whitmore. No. Then what did you want? Ethan's voice became quieter. For a cold woman to stop shivering. The room stilled. Caldwell leaned back, unconvinced. Until this is resolved, we've requested that Lakeshore remove you from the Whitmore account. Ethan nodded once. No pleading. No anger. No performance. He unclipped his temporary building badge and placed it on the polished table. Anything else? That will be all. Ethan turned toward the door. Mr. Walker, Rebecca said. He stopped. For what it's worth, Claire didn't authorize this meeting. Ethan looked back. Then don't make her apologize for it. He walked out. That evening, Claire returned from an investor meeting and found Ethan's access badge sitting on her desk. What is this? She asked. Rebecca closed the office door. Caldwell questioned him. Claire's face went still. About what? Whether he knew who you were before he gave you the jacket. For several seconds, only the faint hum of the building could be heard. Then Rebecca placed the hotel security report beside the badge. There's more. The footage tracks Ethan for 11 minutes before he noticed you. He came directly from the subway route after finishing a service call 3 blocks away. He never entered the hotel, never spoke to staff, never looked at the vehicles searching for you. Claire stared at the report. So he couldn't have known. No, Rebecca said. And Lakeshore's dispatch records show his assignment here was generated at 8:51 this morning by their scheduling system. Pure coincidenza. Claire's eyes moved to the worn jacket hanging beside her desk, and something sharper than embarrassment entered her expression. The secret Ethan had never known was no longer merely the reason his kindness mattered. Now was the evidence that could clear his name. Claire did not call Ethan that evening. She could have asked Rebecca for his number, sent a car, or summoned him back to the tower with one phone call. But every option felt like something Claire Whitmore, the billionaire CEO, would do, and she was beginning to understand that Ethan Walker had helped Claire the woman. So at 6:20 the following evening, she parked her own gray SUV half a block from Ethan's apartment building and stepped into the cold, carrying his folded navy jacket in a paper bag. The neighborhood was nothing like the world surrounding Whitmore Industries. Brick apartment buildings stood beneath bare trees. A city bus sighed at the corner. Somewhere nearby, onions and garlic were cooking behind an open kitchen window. Claire checked the address Rebecca had found through Lakeshore's employment records, then hesitated outside apartment 3C. She knocked. Small footsteps approached. The door opened 3 inches, held by a security chain. Lily peered through the gap. Can I help you? Claire smiled. Is Ethan home? Who are you? Claire. Lily's eyes widened. The jacket lady? Claire froze. I suppose I am. Dad, the jacket lady is here. Ethan appeared behind her wearing a faded Northwestern sweatshirt. Surprise crossed his face. Claire, I wanted to return this properly. He looked at the paper bag. You already returned it. I borrowed it again. Ethan almost laughed. That's becoming a habit. Lily released the chain after Ethan nodded, and Claire stepped into the small apartment. She immediately noticed the refrigerator covered with school drawings, the Christmas jar on the counter, and an old framed photograph of Ethan beside a smiling woman holding baby Lily. There was no luxury here, but there was something Claire's penthouse had not contained in years. Warmth. Hot chocolate. Lily asked. Lily. She probably has somewhere to be. I don't, Claire said. Ethan studied her. Hot chocolate it is. 10 minutes later, the billionaire CEO sat at a second-hand kitchen table, drinking from a mug decorated with cartoon snowmen, while Lily explained, in great detail, why her father was terrible at remembering grocery lists. Claire laughed more than she expected. Then Lily pointed at the jacket. I fixed that. I noticed the purple thread. Dad wanted blue. Purple was all we had, Ethan said. Purple is better, Claire replied. Lily smiled triumphantly. As Ethan washed the mugs, Claire's eyes fell on several envelopes near the refrigerator. One carried a hospital logo. Another was an old insurance statement. She looked away, unwilling to invade his privacy, but Lily followed her gaze. Those were Mom's. Ethan became still. Lil, it's okay, Claire said softly. Ethan dried his hands. My wife, Sarah, got sick when Lily was 4. I took fewer hours near the end so I could be home. I'm sorry. She hated people saying that. His smile carried both pain and affection. She used to say, don't be sorry, be useful. Claire looked toward the photograph. Suddenly the man in the rain made more sense. His kindness had not come from abundance. It had survived loss. Rebecca told me what Caldwell did, Claire said. You didn't deserve that. Ethan's expression remained calm. People see what they expect to see. He thought you wanted something from me. Most people probably do. You didn't. Ethan met her eyes. I didn't know there was anything to want. The words landed gently, but Claire felt their weight. Lily disappeared into her bedroom and returned carrying a small sewing box. The sleeve is coming loose again. She handed Claire the jacket. You can help me fix it. Claire looked down at the purple stitching and smiled. For the next several minutes, CEO and child sat together repairing the coat, while Ethan watched from the kitchen doorway. Claire had negotiated acquisitions worth hundreds of millions of dollars without trembling, yet threading that tiny needle somehow demanded more care. When she finally stood to leave, Ethan walked her downstairs. You didn't have to come here, he said. Yes, I did. Why? Claire looked back toward the third-floor window where Lily was waving. Because yesterday, I knew you were innocent. Tonight, I understand why. Ethan said nothing. Claire reached her SUV, then turned. Caldwell thinks your kindness was calculated because you somehow knew who I was. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to prove exactly when you learn the truth. For the first time, Ethan realized Claire was no longer trying merely to repay a jacket. She was preparing to put her own hidden identity at the center of the evidence that would restore his dignity. At 8:05 the next morning, Ethan was replacing a blower motor at a neighborhood medical clinic when Frank appeared beside him holding a white envelope. Whitmore Industries sent this. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag. Another investigation? Not exactly. Inside was a formal letter restoring Ethan to the Whitmore account, followed by an offer for a permanent facilities position with salary and benefits nearly twice what he earned at Lakeshore. Beneath, it was another document authorizing a $50,000 payment for what the letter described as reputational harm and personal inconvenience. Ethan read everything twice. Frank, did you know about this? No, would you take it? Frank gave him a tired smile. I've got 3 kids in college. I take money from Santa Claus. Ethan folded the papers. Claire sent this. Her office did. At 10:30, Ethan entered Whitmore headquarters again, but this time he carried no tools. Rebecca escorted him upstairs to Claire's office. Claire stood when he entered. You got the offer? I did. Good. Ethan placed the envelope on her desk. I can't accept it. Claire's expression changed. The salary is competitive. More than competitive. Then what's wrong? Nothing. Ethan, you lost work because someone in my company questioned your character. And that should be corrected. That's what I'm trying to do. With $50,000? Claire paused. That payment is separate. To me, it isn't. The city stretched behind her in cold morning light. Ethan rested one hand on the envelope, but did not push it toward her yet. Claire, I gave you that jacket because you were sitting outside in 38-degree weather crying like you had nowhere safe to put the pain. I didn't know your last name. I didn't know this building existed. I definitely didn't know what your bank account looked like. I know. Then don't turn that night into a transaction. Claire lowered her eyes. I wasn't trying to buy your kindness. I know that too. His voice softened. But I don't need your money. I needed them to respect the truth. Silence settled between them. Not angry silence. The kind that arrives when something simple exposes everything complicated around it. Claire looked at the envelope for a long moment. What about the job? Did I earn it? Your service record is excellent. That wasn't my question. Claire understood. Yes, you earned it. Then let me think about that part. A small smile touched her face. Fair enough. Ethan turned toward the door, then stopped. And Claire, yes. Lily says the purple repair should survive at least another winter. Claire laughed quietly. Tell her I trust her workmanship. After he left, Rebecca entered carrying a tablet. You were right about him. Claire looked through the glass wall toward the elevators. I wish that surprised me less. Caldwell scheduled an emergency board session for 4 o'clock. He's arguing that your personal involvement with an outside contractor shows compromised judgment. Claire's smile disappeared. He's still using Ethan? Yes. And he circulated the hotel photograph without the full security timeline. Claire slowly sat down. On her desk lay the rejected $50,000 payment, untouched. Then we give them the full timeline. Rebecca nodded. Security has synchronized everything. Hotel cameras, transit timestamps, lakeshore dispatch logs, elevator access records. What does it establish? Rebecca turned the tablet toward her. At 9:17 p.m., Ethan approaches you. At 9:21, he leaves for the train. Your security team arrives at 9:23 and addresses you by name only after he's gone. The first documented moment Ethan learns you are Claire Whitmore is the next morning on this floor. Claire stared at the timestamps. There it was. Not sentiment. Not trust. Proof. Put on the boardroom screen. All of it. Claire glanced at Ethan's returned envelope and remembered the sentence that had cut through every assumption surrounding them. I needed them to respect the truth. Every second. Rebecca started toward the door. And bring the jacket, Claire added. Rebecca stopped. Claire's eyes became steady. If they want to put his dignity on trial because I'm a billionaire, then they're going to see exactly what happened when he thought I was nobody. At 4:03 that afternoon, the executive boardroom on the 61st floor felt colder than any broken heating system Ethan had repaired. Claire sat at the head of the long walnut table while Richard Caldwell addressed 14 directors, 2 attorneys, and several senior executives. On the wall behind him was the photograph from the Halston Grand. Ethan standing beneath the awning beside Claire, his jacket in his hands. Coincidences deserve scrutiny, Caldwell said. A contractor approaches our CEO outside a hotel, establishes personal contact, then appears inside headquarters the following morning. Now, Ms. Whitmore has offered him employment and substantial compensation. A director adjusted his glasses. Are you suggesting he planned this? I'm suggesting we don't know. Actually, Claire said, we do. Caldwell turned. Claire remained seated. No anger. No raised voice. Just control. You circulated one photograph, Richard. You forgot the minutes surrounding it. Rebecca dimmed the lights. The screen changed. Security footage showed Ethan emerging from a service entrance 3 blocks from the hotel at 9:06 p.m. A timestamp followed him toward the subway. Lakeshore Mechanical confirmed Ethan finished an HVAC repair at 9:04, Claire said. His normal route to the train passed the Halston Grand. The footage advanced. Ethan reached the awning at 9:17. Claire was visible on the bench. He stopped. Here is where he first saw me. No one spoke. They watched Ethan remain several feet away. They watched Claire refuse him. They watched him remove his jacket and place it beside her. Then they watched him leave. 9:21, Rebecca said. The image changed again. 3 black SUVs arrived at 9:23. Claire's security team approached her. This, Claire said, is the first moment anyone near that sidewalk publicly identified me. Caldwell shifted. He still appeared here the next morning. Rebecca displayed Lakeshore's dispatch records. The Whitmore service request entered their system at 8:44 a.m. Ethan Walker was automatically assigned at 8:51 based on proximity and certification level. He could have requested the assignment. He didn't, Rebecca replied. The scheduling audit proves it. The room became very quiet. Claire stood and walked to a side chair. From it, she lifted Ethan's faded navy jacket. Purple thread crossed one elbow beneath Lily's imperfect stitches. Against tailored suits and polished wood, the old coat looked almost painfully ordinary. This is what everyone has been suspicious of, Claire said. A jacket. Caldwell looked down. Clyde, no. You questioned his motives because you learned my net worth before you considered his character. She placed the jacket on the table. When Ethan gave me this, he believed I was simply a woman crying in 38-degree weather. He didn't ask my last name. He didn't ask what I did. He didn't give me a business card. He didn't even tell me how to return it. One director leaned forward. What did he ask for? Claire looked at him. Nothing. Silence. Not the uncomfortable silence of uncertainty, but the heavier silence that comes when truth removes every convenient excuse. And when I offered him $50,000 after his reputation was questioned, Claire continued, he refused it. Caldwell's face tightened. That doesn't change the governance concern. It changes your accusation. Claire placed the rejected payment letter beside the jacket. He told me he didn't need my money. He needed you to respect the truth. No one looked at Ethan's photograph anymore. They looked at Caldwell. One director closed his folder. Another removed his glasses. The general counsel spoke first. The evidence is clear. Mr. Walker had no prior knowledge of Ms. Whitmore's identity. Claire nodded. Then the record will reflect that. Caldwell said nothing. For once, the man who had turned suspicion into strategy had no argument left. Later that evening, Ethan's phone rang while he was helping Lily with multiplication homework. "Ethan," Claire said when he answered, "it's over." He leaned against the kitchen counter. "What happened?" They saw everything. And Claire looked through the boardroom glass at the jacket still resting beneath the city lights. "They finally understood that you helped me before you knew who I was." Ethan was quiet. "Good." Claire smiled faintly. "There's something else. The board formally cleared your name, and Caldwell has withdrawn every allegation." Ethan looked toward Lily, who was carefully drawing purple stars around her math problems. "That's all I wanted." Claire touched the repaired sleeve. "I know." And in that moment, the secret that had once separated their worlds had done something neither expected. It had restored Ethan's dignity, exposed the assumptions surrounding Claire's wealth, and left one final question neither of them could answer with evidence. What happened now that there were no secrets left between them? 3 weeks later, the first real snow of winter began falling over Chicago just after sunset, soft flakes drifting between streetlights and settling along the brick ledges outside Ethan's apartment. Inside, Lily sat cross-legged on the living room floor, making paper snowflakes, while Ethan stood at the stove, stirring tomato soup. Life had returned to something recognizable. Lakeshore had restored every hour Ethan lost. Whitmore Industries had formally cleared his record, and Claire had kept her promise not to turn kindness into charity. She had offered him the facility's position again, this time through the company's normal hiring process, with his certifications and work history reviewed exactly like every other candidate. Ethan had accepted, not because Claire Whitmore was a billionaire, but because he had earned the opportunity. At 6:42 p.m., someone knocked. Lily looked up. "I'll get it. Check first." She peered through the peephole, then grinned. "It's the jacket lady." Ethan stopped stirring. When he opened the door, Claire stood beneath the hallway light with snow melting in her blonde hair. No assistant. No security detail, no tailored executive suit, just jeans, winter boots, and Ethan's faded navy jacket wrapped around her shoulders. The purple stitching showed proudly at the elbow. Ethan stared at it. "You stole my coat again." "Borrowed." Repeated borrowing becomes suspicious after a while. "Then perhaps you should report me." Lily appeared beside him. "I'm a witness." Claire laughed, and Ethan stepped aside. "Come in before my jacket has to save you twice." The apartment smelled of grilled cheese and cinnamon. Claire carried no expensive gift, only a small grocery store pie. That mattered to Ethan more than she probably understood. They ate at the little kitchen table while Lily described school, Christmas decorations, and her firm belief that Claire needed lessons in proper purple stitching. Later, when Lily disappeared into her room to finish homework, Claire stood by the window watching snow cover the fire escape. "The board approved the employee protection plan," she said. "The maintenance jobs? All of them. We found savings somewhere else." Ethan nodded. "Good." Claire looked at him. "You changed something in that room. I wasn't even there." "Exactly." She touched the jacket sleeve. "Everyone in that boardroom knew what I was worth. You were the only person who helped me when you didn't." Ethan leaned against the counter. "Claire, you don't owe me a different company because I gave you a coat." "I know." Her voice softened. "That's why I'm not here as your CEO." He waited. For once, Claire seemed uncertain how to continue. "I spent years believing every kindness had an invoice attached. Every friendship had leverage. Every invitation wanted something. Then a man who was late getting home to his daughter walked in a freezing rain because a stranger looked cold. Ethan glanced toward Lily's bedroom. Sarah used to say, people show you who they are when there's nothing to gain. Your wife sounds like someone I would have respected. She would have liked you. Claire's eyes lowered. Even knowing who I am. Ethan smiled, especially after finding out you can survive grocery store pie. Claire laughed quietly, then became serious again. I don't want to repay you, Ethan. I tried that, and you were right to refuse. I'd just like a second chance to know you without the hotel, the boardroom, the money, or the misunderstanding. Ethan looked at the woman before him. Not the name on the tower. Not the billionaire from business magazines. Just Claire, standing in his small apartment wearing a patched jacket his daughter had repaired with purple thread. Coffee Saturday? He asked. Claire smiled. Coffee sounds perfect. Regular coffee. I'll try to adjust. From the bedroom, Lily called. She can come to the Christmas market too. Ethan closed his eyes. Apparently negotiations have begun. Claire's laughter filled the apartment, warm and unguarded. Months later, there would be more coffee, school concerts, ordinary dinners, and quiet walks beside Lake Michigan. Nothing happened like a fairy tale. It happened better than that. Slowly, honestly, with respect. And Ethan never became wealthy because he helped a billionaire. He gained something money could not manufacture. His dignity remained intact. His daughter saw kindness proven rather than preached. And Claire learned that grace could enter a life wearing work boots and carrying nothing to gain. That winter, Ethan bought himself a new coat. Claire kept the old one, not as evidence of what she could repay, but as a reminder of the night when she had everything except hope, and a single father who thought she was nobody important showed her that human worth had never depended on a title at all.